Hey, how you guys doing? Yes, I'm here at Terrificon 2023 in Connecticut at Mohegan Sun. And guess what, guys? I just ran into a very important writer here at the show. He's the one and only DG Chichester, or Chichester, if you want to use the British pronunciation. DG, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well, man. Thanks for interviewing me. This is great.
Man, thank you for being here. So I don't know anything about you, but could you tell my audience a little bit, how did your love affair with comic books start?
How did my love affair with comic books start? I had an older cousin who I thought the world of, but he, I was younger, he didn't really want to hang out with me so much, so he gave me his entire comic book collection one day just to get rid of me. So he pushed it off on me and I started like leafing through these things and I just got hooked. And then from then on, I just started running to the store every week, buying comics, and just starting to find my favorites. Now, I never thought I'd work in comics from that. It wasn't like I always wanted to work in comics, but that's definitely where all my knowledge came from, was from that original stack and then running off from there.
Well, it's safe to say that your cousin ignited your passion for reading and writing. That's beautiful, man. That's beautiful. So what was your very first assignment like?
My first assignment was tricky because I wasn't confident enough to work on my own. So I found a writing partner, a woman named Margaret Clark. We sort of teamed up. She wasn't getting a lot of traction in the office with her writing, and I was a little too nervous to write on my own. So by teaming up, we made a better pair. But as we were trying to break in, there were lots of other people trying to break in. So our first assignments weren't the most glamorous. So the first thing we ever wrote and sold was a fill-in issue for a cartoon called Defenders of the Earth, I think. And it's
oh shit! I know that cartoon. I have it on DVD at home.
That's the first comic.
Oh man, King Syndicate, the Flash Gordon, the Phantom, Mandrake the Magician, Lothar. What else? The other Defenders. I actually like the cartoon. I like the first version that they were doing, but then when they decided to revamp it, the second version just didn't hold water.
That is amazing that you knew that. Now, when we wrote it, we sold it, but it was never made into a comic. We sold the plot, but they never used it to make something. But the first published comic that we did was a solo Avengers story, an 8-page solo Avengers story with a character named Dr. Druid. And that was the first comic that got illustrated, which happened to also feature Lee Weeks as the artist, who I would later team up with on Daredevil.
Ooh, man. I'm really addicted to the Defenders of the Earth, though. Don't get me wrong. I love the show. It's just that I wish they used the original version. They should have kept the Phantom. The Phantom should have had a son instead of a daughter, because I'm not against women taking over things over, but the thing is just that a lot of females don't like putting themselves in serious or dangerous situations. So it'd be better off if the mantle was passed down to a man. That's just my opinion, though.
I never saw the second one, so I don't know how well it played out, but anything can be anything if it's done well.
You're right. So your first writing official sign was Daredevil. So what was it like to work on A Man Without Fear?
Oh, it was amazing. It wasn't my first one. It took a while to kind of get there, but being able to work on that character when I was still really young and I wasn't really sure of myself and I was kind of thrown into the deep end of working on a major character was a great way to test yourself, because you have to rise to the occasion and figure out what to do with this character who went through a lot of great creators. Like Ann Nesenti was writing on it, Frank Miller was writing on it before me, J.R. Jr., John Romita Jr. was an artist on it. So it had a lot of talent going into it. So we had to match, or try to match, that level of talent. And it's a great character because he's got these two sides to him that are in competition, right? He's a lawyer and he's a vigilante. So it's very rich in creative opportunity to play out.
So when you received the assignment for Daredevil, did you reach out to any lawyers and get their opinions on what Daredevil should be as a lawyer?
When I was writing it, which was, God help me, like 30 years ago, even though I have a new series coming out now with Daredevil, but it wasn't as easy to reach out to people. Now you can Google every lawyer on the planet, you can Google every crime organization on the planet. So then it was a lot more hard research. Now, I did do some research on lawyers and criminal organizations and the police force in New York City, but I didn't reach out to any. I just did my research and tried to make my best guess from there.
Okay, that's fair, man. I mean, the internet wasn't really big back then. I mean, it was around, just very few people had it. Yep. That's cool, man. Was there ever an assignment you said, hey, listen, I can't do this. This is not for me. I know this is not the right job for me. Have you ever refused an assignment?
No. You know, it's interesting. I always looked at anything I got as an opportunity and a challenge to figure out a different way to write a story. I was actually talking to somebody recently, and he said in 1 month I came out with a crime story, a spy thriller, a Daredevil superhero story, a horror story, and an adaptation of an American Tale, like this little mouse cartoon. So
I watched that franchise. It was really nice.
It's cute, but he said I was all over the place. And I think that was just the way I looked at it. I could tell different stories, and if I hadn't worked in something before, it was a chance to try it out.
So, did you ever try to make your mark in the film business, TV business?
Oh yeah, that was a great question. I mean, I went to film school in college. That's what I wanted to become. I wanted to become a filmmaker and a screenwriter. And my work in comics, I thought, might have been the jumping off point to that. So when I was working on some of the horror comics with Clive Barker, who's a famous author and filmmaker, Hellraiser, Pinhead. We were just talking about that a second ago before he turned the camera on. Clive actually offered me a couple of chances to break into filmmaking. So I wrote a screenplay for one of his stories called Weave World. I wrote a screenplay which went through some producers. It never got produced. And then I also developed an original property with Clive and another writer called Primal, which we had sold to Miramax at one point, but that didn't end up going forward either. So it didn't happen, but I've had a lot of fun telling stories in other ways, so that's really what it's about. How can you tell stories and get them to readers or watchers or anything like that?
Okay, so what are you working on currently right now as we speak?
Well, actually, right now, and it just got announced about a week or so ago, I've been working on a new Daredevil miniseries called Daredevil Black Armor, which sort of goes back in time to when Daredevil had this sort of armored costume that came after this Fall from Grace storyline that I worked on with Scott McDaniel. So Marvel approached me about a year ago, said we're having some success with taking some nostalgia, time travel stories, and do you want to come back in and do this? And I said, yeah, let's try it out. And so we've been developing it, and the artist on it is a guy named Nitho Diaz, who's amazing, and that's coming out in November, and that's 4 issues, so it'll be November, December, January, February.
Nice, man. So if anybody wanted to reach out to you to give you work, what's the best way for them to contact you?
I have a newsletter that comes out about every week, which is at storymaze.substack.com, and you can contact me through that. You could also look me up on Twitter at DG Chichester, Chichester.
All right, guys. Well, you heard what the man said. That's the best way to contact him, through his newsletter and through Twitter. DG, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for being here. Keep kicking ass and take no prisoners.
Take no prisoners is right. Thank you, man. This has been great.
That's a wrap, guys. Until next time. Bye-bye.